So we still continue on government macroeconomic intervention. There's always no government intervention because the market is not giving us allocative efficiency. That means there's a deadweight loss, there's a welfare loss, and that's why there's government intervention. And one of the reasons why we might have a market failure is because of the monopolist. So we want to look into deadweight loss under a monopoly. So what's a monopoly or who is a monopolist? A monopolist is that firm that only produces specific goods within the economy. It's the only producer of that good in that market. That makes it a monopoly. So how does a monopoly maximize its profits? A monopolist will maximize its profits at the output where MR equals to MC. That's a monopolist for you. Unlike in a perfect competition, where they produce where P equals to MC. In a perfect competition, they think more about allocative efficiency, not profit maximization. Are you with me, please? In a perfect competition, because we are price takers, we cannot continuously increase price. We cannot also restrict our output, because if we do restrict output, consumers will go elsewhere to buy, because the market is a perfect competition. But as a monopolist, you are the only one producing goods and services there. And one way to maximize your profit is to restrict output. So you produce where your MC equals to MR. So let's look at deadweight loss under a monopoly. A monopoly causes deadweight loss by restricting output and raising prices above competitive level, which we are talking about in the competitive market. For a monopolist, to maximize profit, what it has to do is to restrict production and increase price. Because as soon as output reduces, products become scarce, and scarcity will bring about an increase in price. So a monopolist will do what? Restrict output. That's the first action. As soon as output is restricted, consumers will start looking out for the product. They won't find the product. So they will be willing to pay any amount for the product. Yes or no? So that brings about the reaction of the market. So the monopolist would start increasing the price because output is scarce. So to raise your price, the first thing you have to do is to make the product scarce. So scarcity will bring about a rise in price. So that's why we said the monopoly causes a deadweight loss by restricting output. The first thing it does is to restrict output. As soon as that is done, prices increases. And because the prices are increasing more than the competitive price, what does it do? It prevents mutual beneficial trades and reducing the total social welfare. So because we cannot find the product we need to buy, it means our consumer surplus would reduce. A deadweight loss. A monopolist has reduced the quantity supplied in the market. That makes the product to be scarce. And because the product becomes scarce, we have to pay a higher price for the product. And that excludes those who are not willing to pay such price. Get the point here? Some consumers will not be willing to pay the price of a monopolist. So it simply means they want to pay a price in the competitive market. So a monopolist will only sell to those who can afford it. Do we get it now? So they restrict the output, raising the price. That excludes certain individuals or consumers from buying the product because they cannot afford it. They only want to buy at a competitive price. Do we get it? I will repeat. A monopolist would restrict output to raise price. Let us stop this and focus. The outcome of whatever you do outside here is zero. That's the reality. You can't eat your cake and have it. It's either you listen and understand what to write in the exams, or you don't listen and you get zero. There's no way out of it. A monopolist would restrict output. That is the first thing. As soon as that happens, consumers will start looking out for the product. The monopolist raises the price.
Take advantage.
Yes. It raised the price above the competitive level. When we talk about raising the price above the competitive level, we're talking about the price it would have sold it if the market was competitive. But because the market is a monopolist, there's no competition. That is why the monopolist can sell at whatever price it wants to sell. So what happens to consumers? Some consumers will not be able to buy. So that means the monopolist is excluding some consumers who are willing to pay a competitive price.
But how do you get the number for the competitive price?
We get the competitive price is a price that is not in a monopolist.
But how do you get it if you only have a monopolist?
That is what I'm saying, that there's a deadweight clause because certain customers have been excluded.
Okay.
A monopolist only want to sell to those who can afford it.
Okay, now I understand.
So they exclude you, not directly or indirectly excluding you, because they are selling at a price that you cannot afford.
Got it.
Do we get it or not?
Yes, I got it.
The monopolist is not saying you should not buy, but the monopolist has increased the price to a level that you cannot afford to pay. Because as a customer, you want to buy at a competitive price, but a monopolist is not selling at a competitive price because a monopolist is a monopolist. It is the firm itself. The market is not competitive. It wants to maximize profit. So why will this happen? Profit maximization versus efficiency. Efficiency occurs in a perfect competition. That is when we have price equals to MC. When monopolists think about what? Profit maximization. That's the difference between a perfect competition and a monopolist. A monopolist is the only one selling, so it could make as much profit as it wants. But in a perfect competition, you start thinking about efficiency because if you are not efficient, your competitors are efficient. They will sell at a reduced price, gaining more customers from you. A monopolist does not need to be efficient because no matter what cost it incurs, it will be able to pass it on to customers.
Yeah, makes sense.
Do we get what I'm saying here, please? Profit maximization versus efficiency. Efficiency occurs in a perfect competition, not with a monopolist. He doesn't care. Whatever price you have to buy because that is the only product available, there's no choice. So a monopolist will produce where MC equals to MR, but efficiency is about P equals to MC. Do we understand? So that is the first reason why we have a deadweight clause. A monopolist puts more effort in profit maximization than efficiency. So there's no allocative efficiency because allocative efficiency comes where P equals to MC. That is allocative efficiency. But monopolists think about what? Profit maximization, which is MC equals to MR. Do we get it?
Yes.
Great. This results in higher prices and lower quantity. So a monopolist will reduce the quantity to increase the price. That's the first reason why we have DWL, deadweight clause. The second one, restricted output. The monopolist reduces output below the socially optimal level to keep prices high, excluding consumers who would have bought the product at a competitive price. Like I said earlier, a monopolist has increased the price to a level that decreases the social optimum level. So you can only buy if you can afford it. Those who are willing to buy at a competitive price will not be able to buy. So a monopolist has excluded you because you cannot afford it. Oh, I want to buy this product where it is $5. I cannot pay more than $5. But the monopolist is selling for $7. So those who can pay $7 will buy, excluding those who want to pay $5. Those who want to pay $5 are what? Those who have talked about a competitive price. That's the second reason for what? Deadweight clause. And the third one, lost surplus. As soon as price increases, consumer demand for the product would what? Would fall. Remember, a monopolist also face what? A downward slope demand curve. A monopolist, irrespective of it being the only supplier in the market, it also faces what? A downward slope demand curve. Which simply means that a monopolist, as soon as it increases the price, the quantity demanded will also what? Reduce. Please get my point here. It's matching up. A monopolist is the only supplier in the market, yes. But a monopolist is facing what? A downward slope demand curve. which simply means that as soon as it increases the price, the quantity demanded would fall.
That's most markets.
So irrespective of having competitors or not having competitors, you are faced with a downward slope demand curve. Do you get it?
Yeah.
So because a monopolist is also facing a downward slope demand curve, it simply means a monopolist would also lose some surplus. Because consumers are not going to buy. So if consumer surplus is reducing, producer surplus is as well reducing. Yes, you might have increased your price from P1 to P2, but some consumers are not going to buy. And that reduces what? Your producer surplus. So there's deadweight loss here and here. Do we get it or not?
Yes.
A monopolist would have raised the price to maximize profit, yes. But some consumers would not buy. Because these consumers are not going to buy, there's producer surplus loss and consumer surplus loss. Because it's the total social welfare loss. The total social welfare is losing. So the total social welfare is both consumer surplus and producer surplus. So a deadweight loss does not only affect the consumers, it also affects the monopolist.
Yeah.
So that is why monopolists will only make a profit. This profit is a short one. It's a short term profit maximization. In the long run, consumers will find substitutes. So that is why the monopolist is facing what? A downward slope demand curve. When you raise the price, you're going to still lose some customers. Now look at it this way. Look at the graph here. There's a deadweight loss under a monopoly because in a competitive market, we're supposed to have both consumption and production at par. Where P1 equals to Q2, P1 equals to Q1. That is where we're supposed to be producing. It means consumption and production is at equilibrium. A competitive outcome is priced on quantity Q1 and P1. P1 and Q1, that's the competitive price, and which means optimum production and consumption, allocative efficiency. But there's allocative inefficiency here because there's a deadweight loss. A monopolist has increased the price from P1 to P2 and has reduced the quantity from Q1 to Q2. That is under consumption and under production. Under consumption will reduce because the price has increased from P1 to P2. Consumer surplus would fall. A rise in price reduces consumer surplus. A rise in price reduces consumer surplus. A fall in quantity reduces producer surplus. Do we get it now? A rise in price, when the price increases, it reduces the consumer surplus. What is consumer surplus? The difference between the market price and the actual price consumer paid. Producer surplus, the difference between the market price and the actual price producer sold the product. So if quantity is reducing, a monopolist is reducing it means its average cost of production is likely to rise. And that reduces producer surplus. So a fall in quantity reduces producer surplus. A rise in price reduces consumer surplus. Does it make sense? So a fall in consumer surplus, a fall in producer surplus is what? A deadweight loss. So there's a deadweight loss here because we are not at equilibrium. Do we understand? Yes?
Where is the producer surplus?
Consumer?
Where is the producer surplus?
Consumer surplus.
No, producer.
Producer surplus.
Yeah, what is it?
The supply curve, this is producer surplus. The supply curve, these are producer surplus. These are consumer surplus.
Wait, so the surplus is basically between P1 and here and from MR.
Yeah.
Alright, thank you.
Do you get it? This is producer, this is consumer, this is producer.
Yes.
Producer is about the marginal cost. Consumer is about the marginal revenue and the average revenue.
Got it.
Do you get it?
Yeah.
Any question about it?
No.
Do you understand deadweight loss here?
Yes.
So there's deadweight loss because there's restriction in output, there's a rise in price. There's a deadweight loss because some consumers are excluded from purchasing the product. There's a deadweight loss because producer surplus and consumer surplus has also what? Reduced. A fall in quantity reduces producer surplus. A rise in price reduces consumer surplus. So that's debt weight loss. Any question? Thank you.